We did the healing on him, and pretty soon I started to realize, also from talking to him, but also going into his aura, I started to realize that it really had to do with his boss at work, and the many stages of increasing aggressive harassment, kind of belligerent pressure that his boss at work kept putting on him over a period of a number of years, and it had completely reached a point where he was just going out of his brain with stress and tension and anger and edginess, and of course he's totally fearful of losing his job. He's got a pension, great medical health package, good salary, so he was not going anywhere. So he pretty much had to just suck it up and not say anything to his boss. The interesting thing about this healing was what happened to the auric nerves in his spine that went from normal state to where he was really, as I said, about to go out of his skull. And basically what happened aurically, what I saw in the healing, turn skeleton around here, I saw that there were 3 auric nerves. And I say auric nerves because these physical nerves are going to pretty much stay where they are. But the auric nerves, and this is the interesting dimension of this, is you got 2 things going on with the physical body. You got the placement of the physical body. The arm's going to be where the arm's going to be. The spine's going to be where it's going to be. But the auric, I call it the auric architecture, which underlies the physical body, which really is a model. The physical body models itself after the auric architecture of the auric body. Now, some people think the auric body is what surrounds the body, which is true too, but it starts out inside the body as the model for the physical body, which is really pretty interesting. So when you get a distortion in the auric body, that's when the physical body starts distorting. You get a breakage in the auric body, and it may take a long time, may take a few lifetimes before the breakage happens in the physical body, but that's how it happens. A lot of times starts out in the auric field, and the emotions, of course, a lot of times are what trigger it. The distortion in the auric field, which eventually translates into the physical body. Now, what I saw in doing this healing was there were 3 auric nerves going from the base of the skull, going all the way down to the bottom lumbar vertebrae, and they were not inside the spine, far from it. And in a normal auric architecture, the auric nerves should be inside where the physical nerves should be. The auric nerve should be inside the physical nerve. But in this case, the auric nerves were hovering, 3 of them, twisting and twining about a few inches all around the spinal column, and they were twisting and twining. The image that the body wisdom gave me was a crazy image. It gave me the image of 3 electric eels, long electric eels that would go from the base of the spine to the bottom lumbar vertebrae, and they were twisting and twining and rotating around in all kinds of directions around the spine. And when the different electric eels, the auric nerves, would bounce off each other, that would be a moment when my client would just have uncontrollable, irrational anger and explosive electrical reactions to whatever was being thrown at him. It was irrational. It wasn't even based on reality. Somebody would even be, just being really normal question, but because the auric nerves, three electrical eels, were banging, twisting and twining, twisting and then banging against each other. He would have these irrational outbursts that had nothing to do with reality. You know, so this is pretty dramatic, pretty dramatic stuff here. And this would easily translate. I have another client who has very severe neuropathy, and I've seen the same phenomenon throughout his whole aura. You know, where the auric nerves are not inside the physical nerves, and they're doing all kinds of crazy. I call it sometimes I call it like the old pinball machines from the 60s and 70s. Where the pinball's going all around, bing, 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 bing. Well, that's in a neuropathy example, when the auric nerves just leave the physical nerves and they're just bouncing all around, creating all these crazy energies, and it drives the person crazy, gives them tremendous pain, etc., etc. In this particular case with my client, it just completely took over his attitude and tension, stress, and even aborted into aggression, abuse, and even violence. It started. That's when he got nervous. Doesn't want somebody to call the police on him, so he got nervous and said, I better deal with this right now. So that's when he started seeing me. So basically, the process here was pulling out. I saw all the abuses, like movies. I saw the boss coming into his face and stress. I saw all kinds of stresses going on with the boss interactions. Many types of interactions. I was just pulling them out one at a time. Different areas of the workplace, at his workstation, outside of work, at a party, a work party, etc., etc. All these incidents, and I would describe these incidents to him, and he would say, "Yeah, that definitely happened. That's exactly what happened. That's what he said, more or less, how he said it, etc., etc." And so by pulling all this stuff out, I got the three electrical eels to begin the process of calming down, slowing down their twisting and twining and banging against each other, lessening the incidents with which they would hit each other explosively, creating this irrational reaction in my client, and slowly but surely getting those nerves to calm down, getting closer and closer and closer to the spinal column where they really should be residing. I didn't quite get there in that particular healing, but in future healings I did. And the result really was that we were seriously able to curtail the explosive, violent, out of mind reactions that this guy was having to seemingly normal, interactions with people and normal conversations. So this was pretty dramatic. It just shows how stress and pressure and aggression and violent psychic, emotional, even physical violence will take your nerves. Another good analogy is sort of like a stringed instrument, let's say a guitar, and you can even talk about it in terms of how a musician would play the guitar. And you could look at how a punk rocker might crazily, or Pete Townsend when he was doing his, smashing the guitar and playing it crazy and doing his. So the strings on that electric guitar were just vibrating all over the place, and the emotional energy that the player was putting into the strings was this crazy energy, this emotional release energy, and take that to I was just watching last night a documentary on Sting, and there was a portion of it where he was playing the song Fragile, and he's playing it beautifully on this classical acoustic guitar, um, with this beautiful bossa nova energy, and which is so gentle, really just so gentle, and the strings would be just barely touched, barely vibrating. So that's sort of another analogy, and he was pouring love, deep emotion and love and beauty into those strings. So it's sort of analogous to how the nervous system gets agitated, creates these these disturbances, imbalances, and crazy interactions. This is an electrical firestorm. You know, it's like 1,000 electrical barbed wire fence being twisted. You know, and all these short circuits and mini sparks flying all over the place. That goes on inside of us. We're an electrical universe, you know, and our nervous system is kind of delicate in a way, you know, and really does need that gentle playing, as in Sting's song "Fragile," you know, in order for us to be beautiful and harmonious beings. So, alrighty.